How do we want to start this one? Do we have a fake intro? Like this summer? No. Hi, welcome to... No. Nah. I'm over those. I'm not doing them anymore.
Tonight on the Chase Ellis podcast.
Yes, that's perfect. That's exactly it. That's what we're talking about. Hello, viewers. Welcome. We are...
Then he goes and does it.
Yeah, we're going straight into it. I'm using your intro, man. That's what's going to kick us off right there.
All right, sounds good.
We're actually going to be smoking real cigars, drinking actual wine, because, I don't know.
It's not
like
not
fun.
wine.
Yeah, it's not wine this time. And it's not cigars. It's Lunatic. These are the El Chiquitos. They're 80 gauge. And we're going to be pairing it with what I like for a Maduro is the Dark Horse Cab Sav. Each one by themselves may not be your thing, but trust me, putting them together, phenomenal. Now, I've never had an 80 gauge, so I can't really speak too accurately on that.
First for me, too.
And that's that's
a big gauge.
David Benson, joining us to talk about all kinds of fun stuff from your YouTube escapades.
Yes.
Among other forms of research. But some of the things you've discovered across time as far as secret societies and how they might be...
A YouTube expert bringing you information from other YouTube experts.
Yes.
That's the best kind of internet.
It's a YouTubeception.
Yes.
So... For those out there watching, if you're going to be smoking a cigar, typically you're going to want to cut it. You're going to want to cut it right at the edge of the case line. You're not going to be able to see it in the video, I'm telling you right now. But if you look at the cap has a distinctive line right there at the wrapper. You want to cut it typically just before that, but you're aiming for just the size of the draw that you're looking for. Something like this actually requires a cutter that's a little bit bigger. I don't have one. I have one it's looking like it's going to be...
It's close.
It's really close. So I'm going to let David do his with the cutter if he wants to.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use another method afterwards that I found on YouTube, where we're going to use the punch. This is going to be your go-to solution if you don't have a cutter that will get high enough on the cap. So I'll let you go on that one. I'm going to need to guillotine this knot off too, the twist.
Okay. The toughest thing with these is just getting them parallel. Perpendicular to the length of the cigar. Mm-hmm. But it's pretty sharp, so it doesn't take much to get through it.
Yeah, this one's fairly new. This is it's a Japanese-made cutter.
Is a nice pack.
I really enjoy this a lot.
Almost nothing fell out.
Nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the twist off of the end, just so that I've got a good clean surface to get the punch on. I'm not a pro, so this is probably the wrong way to do it. Somebody can write in and tell me what the right way was. Truth is, I don't care. It's going to work for me. So something this big, you can't just punch it in the middle and rock on. You're going to want to go ahead and you're going to look for the center mark, and you're going to put the line of your cutter on that center mark. You give it a nice twist. If you push too much, if you add too much pressure, what it does is it actually packs the tobacco in, and you got to watch out for that, because if you do that too much, you'll end up having a tougher draw than you should have.
You can even crack the cap sometimes.
Yes, yeah. It'll end up just pushing outward and flaring it, which will cause the cap crack that he's talking about. So we got that guy out. I'm going to tap that out of there.
I usually take my labels off before I smoke.
I'm going to do a second with a slight overlap. This is going to give us what they call a figure 8 punch. They being the horde of ecumenical yodelers as referenced in the Animaniacs. It's an elite club of secret society and world leaders where they decide the fate of the universe. or at least
Warner Brothers were actually pretty good about putting little snippets of stuff like that.
I love that they had.
There was a whole episode of Pinky and the Brain where they.
Yep, that's the one I'm
do you
talking
remember
about.
the They episode?
That's the They episode. That's the one I'm actually referencing right now.
That one's great.
We're going to join They, Pinky. Oh, who's They, Brain? It's the horde of ecumenical yodelers. I'm glad you got that reference, actually. That's pretty funny. Did you hear they're bringing it back?
No, I did.
Animaniacs is supposed to come back.
I wondered about that because they were putting it back on Netflix not too long ago.
Yeah.
And I was excited about that, and I thought maybe that's a trial balloon.
I drove Heather nuts with it, actually, because I watched it all the way through probably 2 or 3 more times.
It was
since they
banned.
put it on Netflix.
It was banned in my childhood household for a time.
What?
Yeah,
I mean,
my mother said it made us too hyper.
Okay, yeah.
So, I mean, that's fair.
Which is funny because now you look at Instagram and TikTok, and the rate of refresh is just insanely high.
Yes.
I mean, not
TikTok
for
especially.
Kids. Kids don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to check the draw on this one. Oh, we should probably light these, eh?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go ahead and fire up this guy. This is a Monte Cristo desktop lighter that I found in a thrift store. It's so cool. Let me do this right, though.
Might take a bit. This is a fat cigar.
Holy crap.
You're not even white yet.
Whoa! Oh my
you're
gosh,
gonna need
impressive.
Uh-huh.
Yep, I'm a rookie.
There you go.
I might have gotten away with just one punch.
Yeah,
crap.
This is a pretty open draw. I mean the opening I cut here is about the size of a normal cigar.
Yeah, I mean, for comparison,
I
don't have it handy, but I have got some regular, typical cigars nearby. Yeah, that's too funny.
I like to toast my edges more than you do, so I usually start with that.
Wow,
you waste a lot of gas that way, though.
I've got this guy that gives me gas for free, so
nice. You're welcome.
Thank you.
There you go.
I may have to work on it a little more, actually. So I got to say, the figure 8 punch gave me a lot more draw than I thought it would. I'm going to have to work on it a little more.
Yeah. You got about half of it lit.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm close.
Oh, don't fail me on international television. It's like Eleanor in Gone in 60 Seconds. Don't do this to me.
Well, I mean, not double clutching like you should.
Yeah, I double clutch in a big rig. That is one of the best inaccurate car guy movie moments right there.
Oh, and Gone in 60 Seconds?
No, that's Fast and Furious, actually. That's the first Fast and Furious. That's after...
After they jacked the
I'm going to nerd out here. That's the first race between Brian O'Connor. He was Brian Spillman at that point because he was undercover.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's the first race with him versus Vin Diesel, which is great because in Fast and Furious 4, there's a lot of throwback to that. I really like that movie. So that's why my recent list since the Fast 9 movie is coming out, it's like there's like 14 movies you can watch if you include all the DVD prequels that are featurettes in not featurettes. I'm talking about like short films to connect some of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Los Bandoleros is on the Fast 5 special features. The turbocharged prequel to Too Fast, Too Furious is in the special features of Too Fast, Too Furious. That is literally the title of the short.
I think that's the only one I've seen, the short one.
It's neat. You see where he finds the skyline. Like you're gonna find an R34 hanging out in the back of some dealer's lot with the kid that really wanted it, who works for the dealer, being upset when it's gone. I mean, come on. No. Not an R34.
It was a little too convenient, and they didn't really explain it.
Mm-hmm. No, I didn't notice until like third viewing. If you watch Fast 4, which is Fast and Furious, not to be confused with The Fast and the Furious. It's a different title. Anyway, he actually takes the guts of an R35 and puts it in the R34. Ooh, launch control. But anyway, enough of that mess. I'll probably be posting my recommended viewing order. It's going to be very Star Wars, because 14 films is way too many. If you want to get into some, like, you got to be curious. There's a reason they've been able to make this many movies, right? There's probably something to it, but not enough to it to make you want to sit down and go back to number 1 and catch up to number 9.
I felt the exact same way about The Land Before Time.
You didn't watch the original Land
I'm
Before
not going to
Time?
go back. It's just not worth it.
What?
No, of course I did.
I was going to say.
I was like 6, man.
Now.
I saw it like 50 times.
I still look for tree stars.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so gotta say, I love Lunatic in general. This is...
What have you had of theirs before?
You know what? I should just show people.
Yeah.
Because it's my favorite. Once I remember where I put them all. There. So, shout out to the Pipe and Pint in Greensboro and Winston-Salem, and soon to be High Point, I'm hearing rumors of. Ooh. You'll see I've got one of their labeled cigars as well. It's a very smooth one. So I smoke their labels, which are really, I think it's Our Dad. I don't want to give away all their secrets. I think I'm probably wrong on that. It's really good cigars. So that's their label. And this is what I normally smoke from Lunatic. This is their, I don't even know what it's called. It's just their Maduro. It's not a long time commitment. Obviously, it's a pretty short cigar. But very rich in complex flavor. A little on the dark side for a Maduro. And pairing it with, have you taken a sip since you had some of this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. So much better.
Yeah, this is the only way I'll drink a wine this woody.
Mm-hmm. And we are, I don't know if I mentioned it. I did. This is Dark Horse. It's actually fairly cheap. And these cigars won't run you too bad either. I think the 80 gauge was $9, something like that. Maybe right around there. It's right around the $10 mark. These are about $7 each, and these are about $7 each, I think.
Wow, their house label's $7?
Something like that. Is that high to you, or is it?
It is for me.
It's
but
quality.
I buy in bulk at about $3 a stick, so...
Yeah. So I have some. I've got some that I usually keep around that are $4 a stick that I pick up from them as well. Something about local business for me on that one. Because,
Yeah, I need to get over there. I haven't been over there yet.
And they've got a great... golly, we're doing a full plug for you guys. I'm sending this to you guys, just so you know. I'm going to send you the link. They've got a great little cigar lounge in there, both the Winston and the Greensboro location. They've got a great walk-in humidor with an excellent selection. The one in Winston does not sell alcohol, though.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I was speaking with some of the guys there, and that wasn't their full intent necessarily, but when you've got the name of the Pipe and Pint, where's my pint? I mean, seriously, guys. They will
It comes in pints?
yeah. They will work with you on trying to get it to you. I won't go into the specifics of how for, legal reasons. It's not delivery. But so in Greensboro, craft brews, wines, and they usually do like a wine and cigar night as well. Great group of guys. Their pipe blends, phenomenal. Really love. 1Q is a good one for everybody. It's a good mix of. It's got very little bit of Black Cavendish in there, but mostly a vanilla flavor to it. Really nice stuff. Jamie Ellswick actually turned me on to that.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would know.
I trust anything Jamie does. So you know who else loves cigars?
Outing all the cigar smokers.
Masons. That's a shameless segue right there.
From what I gather, they tend to prefer pipes.
Do they?
At least if Albert Pike is any indication. If you ever go to DC and go to the
Man, I suck at this.
museum that's basically a shrine to his name.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's got a whole room full of memorabilia. But you'll see plenty of pictures of him with his giant saxophone-sized pipe.
So it's hard to find anybody in established positions in the U.S. that's not, at least on some level, a Masonic member. I mean, if you look at the Founding Fathers, you look at...
That's true. It's a secret society. So...
Depending on the chapter, though, this is where it
Yeah.
gets interesting, because I've seen those guys going down the road with the compass. They're like, they wear the hat, they got a shirt. I looked at a guy one day, I said, you know, the point of this is it's secret, right?
No, but that's
He's
the
like,
whole point
man,
of the...
I'm
That's the whole point of the symbolism.
It's like, what, you just going with Fight Club mentality here? Rule number 1 is it's a secret society and we don't show off our branding, so people will.
Yeah, I've often wondered like who manufactures those things and stuff. Yeah.
Gospel Publishing House.
Probably.
Hey, shout out to Gospel Publishing House, though, for Royal Rangers. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, probably,
even if you are
probably
Masonic. I don't think you are, though.
Probably
but you
not.
never know.
Yeah. It's I think I'd have to check on this, but I think the just since you mentioned that, the publishing house that publishes most of the documents used in the in New York for the United Nations is called Lucius Trust. It's nearby. It's like a block down. Mm-hmm. It was originally Lucifer Trust.
Was it actually really? Mm-hmm. You know when they changed that, or why they changed that?
I don't remember when.
Because Lucius is derative of Lucifer.
Yeah,
which is the first thought there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if it was too on the nose or.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So I gotta ask.
But they were basically an occult publisher. They publish all kinds of stuff.
So by trade, you're an aerospace mechanical engineer. Mm-hmm. How did you get into pursuing this rabbit trail?
Or just where the curiosity came from?
Well, I mean, what sparked your curiosity? I mean, you're intellectually curious. That's one of the things that you and I have, I think,
that's true.
In common.
It's kind of the curse where things you can't prove or disprove tend to be the things that don't ever stop interesting me.
Well, it's like a problem.
Yeah, that doesn't have a solution, so
Yeah.
you can keep wallowing in it forever.
I don't know how many engineers the audience knows, but we can't have unsolvable problems.
No, those aren't allowed.
It can have a bad answer.
You can have an estimation.
Yes, but you at least have to have that.
It has to work good enough.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So, well, I guess I've always been interested in this sort of thing. I guess the first time I was made aware of the existence of societies like that, or just just that what's available in pop culture and public knowledge is not all that there is in the world. I've got to give a shout out to Dr. Kent Hovind. And
So
I'm already seeing people comment, he's not a doctor. But anyway.
Okay, well,
Dr.
let's
Dino.
go with it, because Dr. Seuss wasn't a doctor either.
That's true.
So why does he claim he's a doctor if he's not?
I think he has a doctorate from an unaccredited university. That's where the controversy was.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. I've been paying attention to him a little bit since he recently got out of prison. Guess he was in there for mail fraud, but I don't want to make the show about that.
It'll be worth
too mired.
Yeah.
But the point was, back in the 90s, and some of our church friends will probably be familiar with this, but back in the 90s, he was making VHS tapes, mostly about, creationism and, things in the textbook that in the schools that he disagreed with and didn't think should be in there, and why.
Okay.
And he was originally a high school science teacher, if I remember correctly. But he had a book. He had a tape series, and he redid them several times. As he would do his little talks around the country, he'd record them and he'd make new ones. But in every set, there was always, I think there were usually 7, and usually the very last one usually was like after you've seen all of his other, stuff that sounded crazy. he would get to the one about secret societies and libertarianism and whether or not you should really be paying your taxes and all that stuff. And so
Your theft dollars.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And you could tell why that was. You had to get through all the rest of his stuff before he would hope that you got to that disc. But if you got to that tape, he'd had it there for you.
Tapes, by the way, for you millennials and
VHS
younger
tapes.
Gen Zs. It was this thin film of like really dark magnetized stuff on reels that was in a cassette retainer.
It would make the coolest noises when your cassette player when your VCR would crunch them.
I forgot about that, because every now and then you had the high-speed rewinders, right? Mm-hmm. That would slowly spin up to a high speed because you didn't want to break the tape. It had to go from one spool to the other spool.
But once it got going, it could really go.
Yeah.
But you had to slow down before,
because it's a torque issue. It's not a horsepower issue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We'll get into that in another episode.
But anyway.
Torque versus horsepower.
So that was my first exposure to it, and didn't think much of it at the time. But I think I remember my dad said, I don't know about some of that stuff, but he's right about taxes. And of course, my mom was a Christian school teacher, so she liked all the other content. And I think she tried to keep us away from that last tape, but we saw it. But anyway,
it's like Batman the Animated Series for me.
Yeah, it's not like
my parents tried to keep.
It's not like it was
away
forbidden,
it,
but it wasn't encouraged. Yeah. But anyway, so when I got into college, I got a theology student that was a friend of mine down the hall. He got me into a Bible teacher by the name of Chuck Missler. And if you don't know, Chuck Missler was a mechanical engineer by trade.
I didn't know this.
Yep. So I found a kindred spirit. Mm-hmm. And I also liked the guy that showed it to me, so I wanted to, get caught up on what he wrote and what he said, so we could discuss stuff. And he's the type of guy where, kind of like me, he doesn't produce anything terribly original, but he collects information and puts it in a package that's understandable, mm-hmm. and delivers it to people who don't have time to do that. And I found him fascinating. He died only, I think, 2 years ago. It was 2018. Yeah, so just under 2 years ago. Mm. And that was a sad day for me. He was kind of one of my greats. But anyway, he was affiliated with what's that church out in California? Is it Calvary Chapel? I think it's Calvary Chapel. Something like that. Anyway, so but he would, every once in a while, he would talk about some of what he knew, working in the places he'd worked in. He'd worked with a lot of government contractors for, military weapons, some in aerospace. He even was part of a project at Ford when they were building their giant plant in Detroit, if I remember correctly. It might not have been in Detroit, but at the time they were, now everyone's kind of vertically integrating, sourcing everything out.
Right.
Or not vertically integrating, but at the time they were trying to build a car from start to finish, raw materials going in one end and car coming out the other.
Ford still likes doing that. If you've noticed,
more than the others.
They're doing They're dealing with a lawsuit right now. Their double clutch transmission design in the Ford Fiestas and the Ford Focuses. Some of the Transit vans, I think, have it as well. They're awful. They're dying every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. I'm telling you, man, and they didn't bother to issue a recall for like 3 years. What they had on their 1-800 number for support was, here's the name of the lawyer team that's got the class action suit against us. Go sign up with them. On the automated support line. And I'm going...
Some bean counter said that would be cheaper.
But the fun thing was, they could have bought it from Audi.
Mm-hmm.
They could have bought it from anybody. Like a double clutch automatic gearbox would have been... The Europeans have been doing it for years.
Mm-hmm.
Why not do it? And no, they like to keep it in-house. They like it to be theirs.
I didn't know they were still doing that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's in everything, but it does seem to be they do seem to be making exceptions, but that is still the goal. Keep it as in-house as possible. But we're in a globalized world now. You can't do everything anymore.
Mm-mm.
Sadly.
No, it's not cost effective anymore. Mm-mm. But anyway,
so Missler was working with Ford back when they were.
Yeah, I was just trying to, for people who don't know who he was, that was his background.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I don't know who he is.
He would get into esoteric stuff.
Mm-hmm.
His big thing, he with a guy named Mark Eastman, he did both a couple books and a very long lecture series on the abduction phenomenon, things like that. But it was really good because it was real history. It was actual studies done at universities, things like that. It wasn't like, let's go find Joe Blow in Utah and ask him what he saw.
Yeah. One of the things that I really respect about people who are engineers is the devil. Well, I argue that the devil and God are both in the details. You have to get to the details to find out who it is. Is it God or is it the devil?
Yeah, the old saying doesn't include the second part, but I can see where you're coming from with that.
The old saying doesn't include it, but that's why I've added it in, because it's like you really need to figure out which one it is. And engineers can't function without getting to the details.
No, it really bothers us.
They have to know. Right. Really so they won't let it go.
There's something that doesn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
That puts the whole system into question.
Yes, absolutely. The whole system into question. Like the whole framework. You start going,
it's like we'll keep
that's
using
gonna fail.
We'll keep using it while it's working, but we're going to figure out what's going on here.
Like you said earlier, it's true enough for now.
Right, exactly.
So Missler would have taken that type of detailed approach.
And he does. He definitely does.
His investigations in things like secret societies or...
Yeah, and he... some of his... Every once in a while, he would quote from some of these occult types just as examples for things that he... Which is so weird, because it's so esoteric, no one would know what he was talking about. But I was curious. So like when he would, he'd have like an Edgar Casey quote or something. I'd bother to look it up, and I was like, wow, this guy was nuts.
Yeah.
It's like he was literally an occult prophet. Like he actually told fortunes that happened, had dreams that came to pass. And, that at first that kind of kind of rocked my world a little bit because, you're when you grow up in church, something that's often said is, lots of things. There's no such thing as ghosts. There's, for example, which is a topic for another day. But,
no, I'm hoping to have my sister in on that one.
Okay.
Because she actually does ghost hunting.
Oh, does she?
Yeah. And
I'm not a proponent of that.
She grew up in the Christian
I'll say that
home
now,
I grew
but
up
I'd be very interested in talking to her.
Wait, sorry, I was talking over you there.
I just said I wouldn't advise anyone do that, but I would love to talk about it.
I think you're playing with fire when you do it.
I agree with
that. I think Saul found that out the hard way.
Yeah.
When
That's
he
fair.
tried to summon Samuel. Is that who he was reaching out to?
Yeah.
Yeah,
the Witch of Endor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He found something.
I always wondered if that's where they got the planet for the Ewoks, or the moon that they lived on.
Endor?
Wasn't it the moon of Endor?
So, yeah, have you watched The Battle for Endor? Mm-mm. Yeah, there's a whole Ewok movie.
Oh, I was aware, but
I
didn't care.
It's a step above the Christmas special that...
Well, that's at least something.
Yeah, right.
I would have been very impressed if it was worse.
I haven't seen the whole Christmas special.
Neither have I. I don't think anyone has.
Somebody
had it on in the background during a Christmas party or something. They might be able to claim that they've seen the whole thing.
Somebody has it on the original Betamax somewhere.
No, at some point, I watched it with a bunch of friends, and because someone got a hold of it, and we were like, we got to check this out. And we were all like, our face might stick this way. So we better stop. We got a couple hours in.
From now on, you and those guys have that face of sheer disgust just everywhere. That's your
it's just
zero
permanent
face.
cringe. It never let go. It's the whole thing. You had a bit of a break during the 70s commercials.
Yeah.
Which were kind of fun, but then you had to go back to the cringe.
Yeah.
And the unsubtitled Wookiee dialogue.
Yes, I thought that was brilliant.
Brilliant?
Yeah, that's brilliant because it's a great ripoff, right? If he had actually developed a language for Wookiee that was translatable, that would have been cool.
Yeah, leave it to Lucas to put himself in Tolkien's level.
Yeah. Yes,
that kind of hubris.
He put himself at Tolkien's level without actually being
doing the work.
Yes, which is, that's just classic.
We can probably get a guy to do that, right?
Yeah.
Anyone who could write a Wookiee language?
I've got this idea for Jar Jar. Can we get Jar Jar into the Christmas special? They spent $100,000 on that suit.
It's okay if no one can speak it. We'll animate the mouths and it'll be fine.
They'll infer it from the emotion. Yeah. The emotion and the detail of the face that is covered in fur. It's like a step away from Cousin It from freaking Addams Family, except Cousin It was entertaining. That rabbit trail could just go forever. Do you see where they're talking about bringing him back as an EP?
Who?
Lucas.
As an what?
Executive producer for some upcoming Star Wars series on Disney Plus.
Well, it was only a matter of time, really, wasn't it?
Can't we just give him the title? Don't let him actually do anything.
I'm not sure if that makes it better or worse.
I miss low budget Lucas. I miss creativity under constraint.
Yes. I don't know if he ever had no budget.
He had, he
didn't have a huge one for Star Wars.
You know how you got to do Star Wars, right? He had Star Wars written before he did American Graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bet. You know about this?
Oh, I didn't know about that.
It's a bet. Steven Spielberg looked at him one day and said, I bet you can't do just a standard American movie.
Oh, that's why he did American Graffiti.
So he did American
first.
Graffiti.
I see.
And that,
that gave him the money.
They gave him the money. Mm-hmm. And once he had the success from American Graffiti, he was able to do the space epic that he wanted to do.
I knew that Graffiti launched it, but I didn't know about the bet.
Yeah, it was so funny. How many things started on a bet?
I hate Spielberg.
You hate Spielberg?
I don't like Spielberg.
What?
I just don't.
I
felt very vindicated when the Last Indiana Jones movie came out. So I knew it all along.
It's Lucas's fault. No. That is totally Lucas's fault. All right.
I'm not going to argue with that.
Wait. So
it certainly could.
Here's the thing. I followed the unfolding of that, right? The pre-production on this.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Why?
Why
did you do that?
I was such a huge fan of Last Crusade.
Okay.
I was like,
all right.
You
give them the benefit of the doubt.
You did Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
You've did a forte into dark cinema with Temple of Doom, which they all agree. Every time they had a chance to choose between going a little lighter or going a little darker,
oh, definitely,
they went darker.
Yeah, I won't let my kids watch that one.
No, you shouldn't.
No.
It is deeply demonically graphic.
Yeah, I don't even enjoy watching most of it.
I do.
I like the Last Crusade.
Last Crusade, they learned from their lessons, and they went forward. Now, the Last Crusade was originally going to be Indiana Jones and the Haunted Castle. So the castle that they go to...
I'm glad they didn't do that.
That's what they were going to do for 4.
So they'd already cut some scenes and stuff, sound like.
No. They had the idea, though. They had done a lot of the castle work. That's why you end up at the Castle Brumbald on the Austrian border.
There was so much pointlessness in that film.
That scene with the secret hideout for all the Nazis and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So you end up there. That was the castle they were going to use. They had this whole script written and everything ready to go. They scrapped it. They decided to go with something a little more religious in its theme rather than just going after ghosts. Because, Ghostbusters really did that well. Right? You should probably leave the ghosts thing alone, maybe. And at
least until around 2016 when you really know how to do it.
Right. Because, just a reboot with a gender difference is the way to go. It's like...
It was really just spiking the football at that point. Yeah.
The new one's going to be great, though. I'm telling you right now.
People say so.
That trailer was fantastic. Jason Reitman's in on it. He understands the idea of continuing rather than rebooting.
It's novel.
He's kind of doing what everybody's doing in that he's just adding a sequel 20 years later. I don't mind that, though. There's some kind of forgiveness there. And
it can be done well. It can be done right.
Have you seen the trailer?
Mm-mm.
Dude, when he's finding Ecto-1 in the barn.
You want to go watch the trailer? Or
I do, but we're not going to because, go watch the trailer. But when he finds the trailer, I look at things through archetypal lenses now.
Mm-hmm.
What the son or the daughter I'm not going to go into that. I can't tell if one of the characters is a girl or a boy. And I know that's what we're aiming for these days is this gender neutral approach. So I just don't know which personal pronoun I should be using. So I'm just going to go with Zim. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Because one, I'm probably going to get the wrong one, right? And I'm going to be.
Well, and if you do it for them, you got to do it for everybody.
That's not true.
I
Anyway,
guess it's only true if you let it be true.
New generation, the symbol of hope for the future, right? Because that's what children are in stories. Is the symbol of ultimate hope for the future, the plural potentiality of what could be, right? Typically, like in Pinocchio, you have to go back and rescue the old father. That idea. They go back and they get Ecto-1 out of the barn. And that's what that is.
Oh, that's great.
And you see it. It's
like
dusty. It hasn't been used in forever.
Oh, boy, that's not a metaphor.
Right? No, that's it's the whole thing. They really capture
Sounds like an episode of South Park.
Yes. And, man, it's like there's this moment where they need it, and they fire it up, and there's the old father, the old tools that have been long
Do they
forgotten.
break the fourth wall and say, well, that was neglected?
No, but I'm waiting for Dan Aykroyd to show up and be like, that's my car. Because that dude, if you watch some featurettes with him, he's great.
I love Dan Aykroyd.
He's got heart and soul in the creation of Ecto-1.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, I've seen, they did a video game release a few years back, and he did some work on...
For Ghostbusters?
Yeah, it was a Ghostbusters video game. It's actually really well done.
Totally missed it.
I did too, but seeing some of the featurettes on him them restoring Ecto-1 to do that.
Oh, cool.
You start seeing just how much Dan Aykroyd really was That was his baby. He created it for the original movie. It's great. He can tell you what each thing does, like each piece, each component on there. I mean, it's a converted ambulance. But anyway, they fire it up in the trailer, and when you hear that, it's the same thing that happened in Indiana Jones 4, where I knew I was going to like it, even though I was going to hate it.
You're going to have to justify that to me later.
They used the original Indiana Jones punch sound.
Yeah, I did notice that.
Right?
There were a couple things that they did like that.
If you can tug at those nostalgic...
The nostalgia strings, yeah.
And
especially with millennials.
So
we're suckers for that crap.
We are.
Terrible.
Because technically you and I are millennials, right?
Technically. We're elder millennials, but we are.
There was this in-between category that I saw floating around. Did you see this? Zennials?
I was wondering when that was going to happen.
Yeah.
But wouldn't Zennials be like the tail end?
So, yeah, they are kind of the tail end. They're a little bit of the tail end of X. And a little bit of the beginning of millennial.
I agree that there should be a category for that.
It seems to be, because there's this transitionary period.
There's a difference. To me, I think there's a difference between people who were old enough to know what was going on during 9/11. I almost said 1911. It's not a bad topic, but 9/11.
I like 1911s.
I love 1911s.
We better be careful though. YouTube might ban us now.
That's true.
About,
well, all we did was say a year.
We're just talking about years.
Yeah.
Yes, and tools from those years.
Mm-hmm.
Very effective tools that are still in service today.
Where are they still in service? Who uses them?
I can name at least
Really?
5 people in our church.
That kind of service.
Yeah, there's that design is unchanged since 1911 too. It's
perfect.
Just perfect. It is subsonic.
Mm-hmm.
All right, too much detail.
Sorry.
Moving on.
It's not a year anymore.
It's not a year.
We got to be careful.
Subsonic year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where were we going with that?
Before people who are millennials that were old enough to know what was going on when 9/11 happened.
Yeah, you kind of have to.
And can remember what it was like before.
Yeah, I would say a marker would be, I remember George H.W. Bush being elected.
Mm.
That's probably my earliest.
It's almost
global,
the same marker.
National, global, high level memory.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I still remember Reagan, barely, but I remember him being in office. Right, and that would have been.
I remember being told he was our president.
H.W. was 88.
Right.
So
I remember HW a lot better.
I would have been 4 when he was elected, right? So, but I still have a good memory of it. I remember
that was his race against Clinton was the first one I really paid attention to. I watched all the debates.
Yeah, the first black president,
right,
Bill Clinton, Mr. Saxophone,
who showed up in that They episode, by the way.
He did. But so did George.
He did.
Yes, it was great,
and it was actually appropriate.
So talking about they. The horde of ecumenical yodelers. It's just brilliant writing.
It's the best way to talk about this subject. It really is.
It is a little tongue-in-cheek, especially since, at the end of the day, we might be very intellectually curious and we might be pretty rigorous in our pursuits of investigation, but at the end of the day, we're amateurs.
Right.
We might be high-level amateurs. We might stumble across some cool things.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not making it more than what we are.
That's true.
Right.
That's more than you can say for most of YouTube.
If you don't believe us,
we won't be trying to make Manly P. Hall's name into a 666.
Manly P. Hall.
That's not going to happen.
Still funny. I'm 11. Manly P. Hall. P. Hall. P. Hall. Yeah.
P. Hall is funnier.
So tell me about him. I know nothing about Mr. P. Hall.
I don't know a whole lot about him, to be honest. But I did go ahead and pull some of his quotes. He was at the time they probably would have called him a spiritualist. Today you'd call him an occultist or a Luciferian probably. But
is that like the guy that was with JPL?
No, you're thinking of Jack Parsons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I mean as far as like what he was dabbling in.
Oh, yeah, similar stuff.
Okay.
Let's see. No, I mean he was a Masonic author essentially.
Oh, okay.
So I did pull up a couple of quotes from a couple of his books that were kind of pertinent to the subject. Let's see if I can find a good one.
Let me know when you get it, and I'll quit being the.
Oh, here we go.
the
Okay, this will take a little bit of introduction. So this is, again, we're going to give the caveat, not all Masons. We're also going to give the caveat, not only Masons.
Definitely.
which is a definitely true caveat. But the concept of a lot of esoteric organizations, the frame of reference that they're operating from really stems from a different understanding of the very first happenings in Genesis. So, where in Scripture, the Christian church and the Jewry believe that what is happening in Genesis is quite simply pretty much what most of you have heard in church, which is that Satan was on the earth at the time of Adam and Eve. He deceives the woman, who then brings the apple to Adam. Adam sins with her by taking the apple, and that brings the curse on humanity. Now, we all know from church that Satan is an angel, or was an angel, depending on who you know.
Strangely, we know that from church, but we don't know that from Scripture, right?
Yeah, it is.
We know that
it does have to be inferred a little bit.
Well, it's inferred, but if a lot of the classic culture we have that surrounds Lucifer and the fall and all of that,
spoilers. That's where I was going.
Well,
I jumped the shark.
But
you jumped ahead.
I did. I'm sorry, but I really want to get that John Milton foundation in.
Oh, go right ahead.
Because it's Paradise Lost.
Because that's where we're going. Yeah.
Paradise Lost is where that gets established. And I don't know, like, they seriously considered including Paradise Lost in the canonization of the Bible, which was... What? That's the whole reason I read it. When I heard that, I
never heard.
I must know.
It doesn't surprise me.
Read this.
I think they did the same thing with Dante.
Because it's 12 books
Dante's
of poetry.
Inferno.
12 books of poetry that could have been added to biblical canon. Holy cow, right? So anyway, I just wanted to make sure we're talking about the Masons having a different perspective, but they're having a different
and not just the Masons.
On something that's not exactly
is when you're talking about
Scripture.
When you're talking about the philosophy behind groups like the Masons, but very famously of the Masons, you're talking about the mystery schools, the esoteric knowledge handed down from however long ago they want to claim. The Masons claim it goes as far back as Solomon. Some claim that it goes further back to the ancient Egyptians.
That would make sense, though, with the etymology.
It'd be awful hard to prove, but that is what they believe.
I mean, Mircea Eliade really lays out a good case for Christianity deriving from ancient Egyptian mythology. So I could see where they would.
I find that incredibly problematic, but I understand that the argument can be made.
Yeah, I don't agree with it, but I'm saying a good argument has been made elsewhere, so it makes sense that they would go that way, I think.
Yeah, and it should be noted, too, that especially in the United States and England, the Masons do encourage participation in religious communities. In the Protestant church, especially in America, and in the Anglican church, especially in England. And in fact, the Knights Templar, which is part of the Blue Lodge of Masonry, they actually require, if I understand correctly, they require that that you be a church member and a Christian.
So they want you integrated into the religious communities of your society.
Yes, right. And in some cases, it is a prerequisite. That said, there are groups in the Middle Eastern region of the world that require you to be Muslim. So,
it's local,
right,
established,
and that,
yeah.
This is a point where we can probably go ahead and read this Manly P. Hall quote.
Yeah. Not that I know what it is.
No, it doesn't say which book it's from. Oh yeah, it does. No, it doesn't. It's a bit of a lengthy one. But it says, the true Mason is not creed-bound. He realizes with the divine illumination of his lodge that as Mason his religion must be universal. Christ, Buddha, or Muhammad, the name means little, for he recognizes only the light and not the bearer. He worships at every shrine, bows before every altar, whether in temple, mosque, cathedral, realizing with his truer understanding the oneness of all spiritual truth. All true Masons know that they only are heathen who, having great ideals, do not live up to them. They know, they know that all religions are but one story told in diverse ways for people whose ideals differ, but whose great purpose is in harmony with Masonic ideals. North, east, south, and west stretch the diversities of human thought, and while the ideals of man apparently differ, when all is said and the crystallization of form with its false concepts is swept away, one basic truth remains. All existing things are temple builders, laboring for a single end. No true Mason can be narrow, for his lodge is the divine expression of all broadness. There is no place for little minds in a great work.
It's very seductive.
It's very ecumenical.
I think it's great. I think it's what we're seeing with the rise of scientific and political replacements for religion in society now.
No, they were the tip of the spear. I mean, these groups were the tip of the spear for the humanist movement, certainly. And they talk about that explicitly in a lot of their writings.
So one of the things that was mentioned there is Masonic values. Do we know what those are?
That's a very difficult thing to pin down. If you ask a Mason, they'll tell you that their values are community, their values are honesty, forthrightness in business, and all these things are true. They do actually encourage these, and that's why you see Masonic charities all over the place. That's why you see, cancer research societies funded by Masonic groups and things like that. So, and a lot of people will claim that that's a front for satanic activity, and they may be biting off a little more than they can chew there. The reality is that the rank and file Mason is encouraged to do these things because they are simply good, and so it encourages reputation, it encourages a progressive society, it encourages a lot of the things that they want. But all the people who are doing those things, or at least most of them, they're not allowed to know the secrets that are known higher up. And some of those secrets have been revealed by some of their more illustrious members, like Manly P. Hall, or like Albert Pike around the time of the Civil War, who wrote books and wanted to reveal, to kind of come out of the open, out in the open a little more, to let the public know who they are. And that happened with, not without controversy. There were certainly Masons that were not happy about it. I believe it was one of Clinton's mentors at Georgetown. I think his name's Carroll Quigley. He was one of that ilk. He thought that the these more esoteric groups, I don't know which ones he was a part of, but he had expressed in a couple of his books that he adamantly believed that it was time for them to come out in the open and just basically demand that everyone agree with them because they were simply right. So,
I mean, it sounds like it's coming from a very linear, very well thought out, very detail oriented perspective.
It's a very old system. Whether you think it started in Egypt or you think it started in Bavaria in the 1700s, or you think that it started in when the Egyptians supposedly helped Solomon build the temple, which is another thing they believe.
Yeah, I mean, that's a range of potential origins, but I mean, that's a huge range.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's either brand new 1700s or it's
well, and we know,
it
I mean,
predates.
we know for sure that the Masons as a whole, Freemasonry is older than that, but it's difficult to tell where the mystery schools entered the society.
Yeah. So mystery schools, that's a phrase you've used a few times.
Yeah.
What would a mystery school
again, that goes back to that philosophy which derives from Lucifer as the light bearer. So let's go back to that. So in the beginning, after creation, after everything happens, there's an alternative view that they take of that scenario. Instead of Adam and Eve sinning against God and Satan ruining everything by tempting them to do so, and doing so successfully. Instead, you have a scenario where God is the architect that designs the world. The council of God and God together build the world. The phrase in Hebrew is the Elohim, and there's differences of opinion in what that means.
Yeah, I'm looking
in Christian circles.
I'm looking forward to hearing Dan Stevens. He was in an earlier episode. I'd love to hear his take on some of this.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting. Ask him about Lilith.
I know about Lilith.
Yeah, but he would know more than you and me, probably.
I don't know. Has he watched all 14 episodes of Supernatural so far?
I have not watched one. So
we talk about Lilith. We talk about, oh my gosh, the amount of stuff that they talk about in that. They've done a great job of pulling from the Apocrypha, pulling from some of the Satanist Bible, pulling from. I mean, they do a really good job of sourcing their material. Yeah. I am thoroughly impressed. For a show that was like a WGN, WB, you wouldn't think much of it. It's kind of a little more research went into it than Charmed and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Hey, now get off my Buffy, okay? That's Joss Whedon. That's Mr. Avengers himself right there. Firefly.
Firefly. I don't know about the Avengers. I'm with you on Firefly.
What, first Avengers, come on.
The first one was good. I'll give you that.
First one is solid. Ultron was such a disappointment.
Sorry, man.
So bad. The scene with Thor's hammer was worth it, though. I recently, and what's his name from the Blacklist and from Stargate? What's his name? Come on, what's his name?
From Stargate.
Stargate. Yeah, Daniel.
I don't remember his name. I know who you're talking about though.
He did such a phenomenal job with just a warm bad guy voice. I could see thought Ultron could have that, and that was just stellar voice work. Oh, what's his name?
I'm never gonna remember it.
I knew it until we started talking about it. Fudge. It's a rabbit trail. Anyway, but yeah, Supernatural. They did a really good job, I think, of pulling in a lot of unknown but well established legend lore. Is what it's the phrase they use as lore, and it's an apt phrase.
Yeah,
apt word. Lore surrounding a lot of Christianity and a lot of derivatives of Christianity, like kind of what we're talking about here. But Lilith, the original Eve, is one argument. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, that's kind of where the mystery schools intersect with Kabbalah a little bit.
Oh yeah,
Babylonian.
Tell me about that.
I don't really want to go into that much.
Okay,
you should go into that with your.
That sounded interesting.
Your friend Dan.
I don't know. I don't know what Dan knows. Dan knows a lot about the great grape. I don't know if you made it that far in watching that episode, but we end with the great grape. It's a great story. It's one I was really looking forward to talking with him about.
I'd seen all of them. Maybe I missed that one.
Yes.
Anyway.
It's one of the original grapes from the Garden of Eden.
And
they're being kept for us. And
interesting. Okay.
When we enter the afterlife, we get to drink wine from the original grapes of Eden. Really cool idea. Really fun, but also not like pivotal in belief system either in theology. But it's just really cool. It's one of those things that Supernatural explores. The idea of Lilith, or I'm going to blank on all the demon names.
Yeah, I almost
the Knights of Hell.
I almost intentionally avoid Hollywood depictions of this stuff.
Oh, but it's just bad enough to be enjoyable where you don't take it seriously, right? But you go, I wonder what that's about. And Lilith was the original Eve. It's Adam's ex-wife.
Yeah, that's the story.
Beliefs. It's like, what?
There's all kinds of beliefs about what she does now, because she had a soul, apparently, of course.
Yeah.
So, like, what happened to that?
Right. It's a really cool story. She actually, spoiler alert, I've been reading spoilers because I haven't watched any of season 15. We're on the final season of Supernatural, and Lilith has returned. Yeah, cool stuff.
Bad news.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is bad news.
She's probably what is locked in Pandora's box, if she exists.
You think so?
No, I'm just joking.
Because we also saw God's sister, and she was pretty bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Dude, you and I should binge watch all 14 seasons.
I do not want to do that.
Yes, you do. It's like anime, except live action. It'll be fun. It'll be a ton of fun.
We could screen a few, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's like anime, though. You can't judge it off of a few. You have to watch the entire series.
That's definitely true.
Decide.
That's definitely true of anime. You need to at least get 4 or 5 episodes in before you judge, because they tend to take.
I'm sorry, you cannot judge Trigon.
Oh
in
gosh,
4 episodes.
no.
You can't do it.
No,
you can.
You're better off skipping the first 4 episodes than
you gotta
just
have the monotony.
Well, then just basing your opinion off of them. You can't do that.
Full Metal Alchemist was right there with it too.
Not as bad,
but
yeah, same concept. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it gets dark quick.
So the schools. You're talking about the schools.
Yes.
And so they bring in concepts like Lilith and
right.
Yeah.
So, but the pivotal one is the character of Lucifer, as the fallen angel.
Is he kind of a Prometheus?
He's exactly that. He is the quintessential Prometheus.
The archetypal.
Yes. He is
like using that word.
He's not archetypal. He's fundamental.
Yeah.
So
he's the ultimate version.
Everything
of
else is an archetype of that. Would be what I would say.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So
okay.
Yeah. So, but the concept is that, for those unfamiliar with the term Promethean, Prometheus is the Greek character that gives fire to man.
Yes, he steals it from the gods and brings it to man.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and I forget, he gets beat up for it.
Well, I'm sure the gods weren't very happy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, there's similar things in Jewish literature, where the Watchers come down and they're charged with making sure man doesn't kill himself.
Yeah.
Accidentally.
And if you want to see Watchers,
and ends up
Highlander television series. Adrian Paul. I mean, it's classic stuff right there. Mm-hmm. The Watchers were the cool characters. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And that's some of the stuff that Missler talked about that kind of sparked my fantasy brain.
Because if you grow up in the church, and this is one of the reasons I think you and I are somewhat kindred, you grow up in the church, you get the church stories, and by the age of 14, 15, you start going, there's some things missing.
Yeah, some of this doesn't really. Some of this needs someone to tie the end of the knot.
For us.
Yeah.
Right. For a lot of people, they don't need it. But for us, and if it's so thorough, if it's so deep and so old,
well, and if you believe,
it's probably there.
If you believe it's inspired work, as I do, then
it has to be there.
Then it has to be there.
Yes.
Yeah. So, divinely inspired. So, the character of Lucifer in the mystery school concept comes from a place of freedom. He's the ultimate libertarian.
Liberate her.
No, both.
Okay.
It's the Satanic Church's mantra. I believe it was Aleister Crowley who first coined it, and I think it was Anton LaVey that popularized it. But the "do as thou wilt" is the whole of the law. That's actually a quote from his book.
That doesn't end well.
No, it really
just
doesn't.
From an economic standpoint.
Oh, from every standpoint. We aren't good enough to do as we will.
In my house, when we grew up, we had this book called "What If Everybody Did." Mm-hmm. It's a great little book. Mm-hmm. I need to find a copy of it for my girls because it's like, yeah.
When you do,
when you squeeze the cat, you can get away with squeezing the cat once. Mm-hmm. But here's what would happen if everybody did. And then they show this illustration of this cat that's like caved in the middle, and it's just so perfect. It's like, yeah, it works for one. Yeah,
it's the logical test of extremity, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taking it to the nth degree.
Does this work in the nth degree? Does it still hold true? And often it doesn't, and then you have a flawed philosophy.
Sorry for you leftists watching.
Yeah, it ends poorly for
and rightists.
There's some truth to that. So,
you're both right. Talk to each other.
Actually, you're both wrong
and right. Depending on the situation and the time, you are both wrong and you are both right. You need to talk to each other to be able to figure out who needs to lead in that moment. Sorry.
Yeah. What's that phrase? If you're that saying, if you're a right winger when you're young, you have no heart, and if you're a left winger when you're old, you're an idiot. I'm paraphrasing.
Statistically, there aren't any left wingers when they're old. And what I'm trying to look at now is
certainly fewer.
Well, so you become more conservative across time. We found this out
statistically. That's true.
Statistically, what I'm trying to figure out is that because of the rising tide of the liberal perspective, though? How much effect does that have on it?
Yeah, you could argue that it's the resistance to progressive thought.
But they may have controlled for that.
I don't know.
I got to find out. So anyway,
you're going to burn into your label there before too long.
Yeah, I like to get to the label.
That's why I always That's why I always take mine off right from the get-go.
I already had to do a relight. I'm such a rookie.
Yeah, I should have, but I didn't.
Yeah, so you got kind of some side angle going there.
Here, pass it over. I'll trim it up.
I should have brought the little torch too, but
I almost brought mine. But I like yours.
I like mine too. This is the best thrift store discovery, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, when I found it, right, I didn't know what it was, and they had the price tag right across the label here that says Monte Cristo.
You didn't even know.
So I didn't know.
Oh, I thought you found it and you were like, "Oh my gosh!"
I found it. And I'm like, well, that's weird.
How fun was it to take that sticker off?
It was great. I was having. Matter of fact, I've got the other price tag on the bottom. I got it after it was discounted. This is the $5.99 price tag they had on.
No one would buy it at $5.
Nobody would buy it at $5.99. It's like I found similar ones. I haven't found this model.
I've never seen
eBay
one.
yet. I've not found this exact model, but similar ones are going for like $40 to $80, and I got it for like $4.
Yeah, goodbye.
It's because nobody knew what it was, and I'm looking at it, I'm going, it's got this neat little triangle thing. This looks like it's on hinges. I'm gonna guess.
Does anyone? Have you ever?
When I press down,
you ever watched Doctor Who?
Oh, they open. Is it some kind of webcam? Like, is it a weird camera where you hold it up?
Oh, you didn't even know it was a lighter when you first.
I didn't know anything about it. I'm going, what is this?
That mechanism.
And then I was like,
looks a lot like.
And I saw the top, and I'm like, that looks kind of like a Masonic thing. Is this some Masonic stuff? What's going on here? And I pull it off, and I go, Monte Cristo. I know Monte Cristo. And I wasn't smoking cigars very much at the time, but I was like, I know Monte Cristo. Matter of fact, this pen punch, because this is a pen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is cool. That is a neat.
This is actually also Monte Cristo, which I know because the little Masonic.
Yeah, punches need to be long.
Emblem on there.
You need to have some grip.
So yeah, when I finally I was like, oh, what's under this label? And I pull it off, and I find Monte Cristo, and I go, this is cigar related. It's a cool cigar camera.
Not quite.
I'm not the fastest on the uptake.
Almost.
But then I saw the jets inside. I went, oh, it's got a butane port. It's a lighter. I wonder if it works. And I just bought it to see if it would work. And sure enough, put some butane in it, and yeah.
It's classy.
Yeah.
It's a classy piece.
Yeah, good times. But anyway, I wonder if, like, you see that logo though, right? Tell me that doesn't look like it's Mason inspired.
It's got a triangle and
a
fleur de lis. Is that what it's called?
Is it
the French symbol?
Is there?
Which I guess would make sense.
Yeah. But anyway, so the mystery schools, they're talking about
I can't pronounce French.
And they're talking about
the character of Lucifer.
The character of Lucifer. He's the Promethean.
He's the Promethean.
He's freeing.
The concept is he's
freeing
God
humans from the bounds of God.
God created everything, didn't give man free will at the first, and that is Lucifer's gift to mankind. The desire to pursue knowledge, the desire to determine for himself what good and evil is. So the interpretation of both Lucifer and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is much more Promethean in their concept than it is a tragedy.
Yeah, and as I understand it, that's where Satanists come from.
Exactly, that's exactly where Satanists come from, and they all come from the same school of thought.
Yeah,
and if you follow the trail back between, Anton LaVey, he was a student of Aleister Crowley. So was Jack Parsons.
I love that you don't know who Crowley is. This is so much fun.
Who doesn't know who Crowley is?
You don't.
What do you mean?
Crowley is the king of hell in Supernatural. He's Fergus.
All right, maybe they did some more research for that show than I gave him credit for.
Right? He's Fergus Crowley. He's not.
I mean, Crowley's a pretty obvious one. I mean,
yeah.
He's on the cover of Beatles albums. He's in Ozzy Osbourne songs. He's basically the reason for Led Zeppelin existing. I mean,
wow.
He shows up all over the place.
Yeah,
especially in rock and roll. But yeah. So you follow that back. I mean, it all goes back into that school of thought. Mm-hmm. And that's where it all comes from. And that's why it shows up the same way every time.
And I think that's a natural
It is
question.
It's a natural progression. It's a natural question.
What if the serpent was actually trying to do good? Mm-hmm. But I think that's where...
And that's not necessarily unbiblical. You could say that Lucifer was attempting to further the plan of God by doing this.
I think he genuinely was.
I wouldn't go that far. I would say that he ended up doing that.
This is where my philosophy kind of has started to deviate, in that I think the original sin was Lucifer lying to himself that he as intellect was God.
Right.
Because if you
notice, and that's a biblical truth. I mean, it says explicitly that his sin was pride, right?
Yeah, it's interesting how it manifested. So if he was lying to himself, let's say it was an original lie to himself, we refer to him as the great deceiver, right? we kind of know from our lives, the people who are the most deceptive are the ones that lie to themselves, too. I think he lied to himself first. And when he said that he was going to when he said that eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because it's knowledge, so we're already talking intellect. It's knowledge.
Well, knowledge is a different thing than intellect.
Maybe. Not for him.
I don't know.
But I think he thought intellect was the end-all, be-all.
It certainly seems to be used interchangeably in Hebrew texts.
So since he believed he was equal to God, which we do have scripture to back that up, he was telling the truth when he said, "You will be like God," because he
yes, in a
lied to
sense,
himself.
it was a half-truth. In the sense he was telling the truth.
He was telling the truth based on his self-deception,
Right.
which makes everything that comes out of his mouth
Yeah, it makes it a lot more complicated.
deception. Even though he doesn't know it. It's like, wow.
It doesn't take long before he does, though. But at that point, he's played his hand.
But it's a willful ignorance.
At first it is. Maybe.
Maybe. And it kind of shifts back and forth.
Or maybe giving him too much credit.
I might be. But I like to think that some of the greatest pathologies started small and progressed. They built off of one deception after another.
Right. Well, I mean, everything in the Old Testament, I think, can be used as a type if interpreted appropriately. And that's the same. It's when you say you like to use the term archetype.
Archetype, yeah.
Yes, it's
just a fun word.
archetypal. Rolls off the tongue.
It's like Guatemala. I love the word Guatemala. Hey, I mean, I do voice work, right? So I fall in love with words.
Francisco.
Oh,
That's fun to say.
Antonio Banderas. That's another fun.
It's another fun one.
It is, yeah. So they're going from what I think would be a logical question. What if Satan isn't the bad guy? It's a logical question. And it's a hard one to decide for sure.
Yeah, I believe
based on evidence.
I believe that there were Jews during the captivity in Babylon that asked the same question.
Well, you have to, because in Babylon, the way you were imprisoned was with comfort.
Yeah. Right. To make sense of your predicament. You start asking questions like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think that's why when Christ asked the disciples, "Who am I?" he did it in Corinth. He did it in the capital of all multicultural, multi-religious perspective. He's like, in all of this, where you can see all the possibilities and all of the alternatives, now tell me, who am I?
Yeah, and I think that was necessary.
Undoubtedly. Yeah, it was
that sort of thing has been necessary for me as I've challenged my own Christian faith over and over and over again.
It's the Job thing for me too. It's like, why didn't he just tell Job, "Hey, here's what we're going to do"?
Right.
Because it wouldn't be a double-blind experiment.
Right, it's exactly right. Job is the ultimate spiritual double-blind.
Right, and it's the first book written as far as we know.
Yes, it's the oldest as far as we know.
As far as we've found, right? And I think that's so important because it is the foundational element of, do you curse God?
How bad does it have to get before you will?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And will God let the enemy run rampant?
And what was it, 70 years before he even questioned? That's pretty intense.
Yeah, his whole family was telling him he should.
Right.
Before they got
Before
killed
they
off.
died, yeah. While they
Yeah.
were still around.
But nobody gets to
among the living.
The last couple of paragraphs of that book is key. His riches were doubled. His family was doubled. Like, and I like to think that it was doubled in value as well. So, like, you wouldn't have whoever the wife he got
His second
later
wife was
not
top
the,
shelf.
Yeah, and she was not. Yeah. Well, I mean, she was not the one that would say you should curse God.
That first one was
The first one was okay until she said curse God, right?
yeah, that was pretty. She'd had it.
And rightfully so. You look at the torture.
Oh yeah.
And then, so in a sense, the oldest book talks about that question that you should ask. What if Lucifer was right? What if he's actually the hero of the story? And that's what she said. Phrasing. But that's what she said to him. She's like, you should curse God. Maybe your God is the bad guy. Mm-hmm. It's the same idea.
It's the same question.
And through this discussion, we've just like gotten to where the oldest book in the Bible covers that question. It's a question worth asking.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of what Solzhenitsyn's revisiting in a lot of his works.
Yeah. That's
'Cause
interesting.
he went the other direction.
Yeah. He did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, the mystery schools come from this philosophy. And a mystery school. How do I attend a mystery school? Like, I'm guessing it's not exactly a public sign up.
No, that's a hereditary thing.
Hereditary? Mm-hmm. Okay.
At least from what we know. From what we know, you're born into it.
Okay. So rarely it's an outsider.
So anyone who's joined the Masons wanting to know the secrets, they're not lying altogether. You will know more secrets.
Yeah.
About the craft, but they're not going to tell you everything.
Well, and they don't tell themselves everything.
There's certain.
That's
how the hierarchy works.
Yeah, there's certain knowledge revealed at certain levels.
In fact, as from what I have been told from people who have left at different stages, either in interviews or second or third hand from family members, is that that they will intentionally deceive people at the lower levels. But no one cares, because once you move up, they say, "Well, we told you." It's kind of like it's not projected as a nefarious thing, because I always say it's analogous to scientific discovery. So when Newton discovered the laws of motion, for example, he was basically, before him, all of science, you could say, that was accepted by the church in particular, and by society in general, because the church accepted it, was Aristotle. Aristotle was a very observant man. He was very prolific. He was a very good philosopher. He was a terrible, terrible scientist. And the reason is because he didn't use the scientific method, because it hadn't been invented yet by Francis Bacon.
Right.
For instance, when it was all based on direct observation and pretty shallow observation at that, but very attentive. For example, he would push an object on a table, and he says, "I observe that when I push this object, I apply force to it, and that force is transferred to the block. The block moves as long as I maintain the force applied. When the force is removed, the block stops. Therefore, motion is a response to force, and it is dependent upon force for its maintenance." So that became a problem when large-scale projectiles began to be used in war.
Right.
And
Because momentum becomes a factor.
Right.
Yes.
Which we did not have a equation for, let alone an understanding of.
Right.
So, cannonballs, for example, the people that, I guess you could say, the technicians who design them and things like that, they had to come up with all kinds of crazy explanations for why they functioned. There were things proposed like the column of air is behind it the entire way, pushing it until it reaches its destination. Nice. Yeah, no one ever bothered changing the established understanding. They just tried to make it fit the paradigm, and that's what we all do until someone is brave enough to say this whole thing is wrong, and something else is going on.
Yeah,
and that person usually gets his career ruined.
Yeah, or burned.
Yeah, circa, Galileo.
Yeah,
Kepler.
That's where I was headed.
Yeah. Newton was in a different position since he had a high position in English academia at the time. But
yeah.
But when Newton comes along, he writes his laws of motion. And he says, no, it's actually an object in motion stays in motion until another force is applied to stop it. And in Aristotle's case, what he was observing was actually friction and not the removal of the force. There was a second force
resisting it
in operation, resisting the motion. So, and then we're happy to go to the moon with that information until Einstein comes along and explains to us that's not the whole story.
Yeah.
Again.
Well, we kind of need to know about
gravity. That's sort of the concept of enlightenment.
This bootstrapping knowledge.
That is followed through the Masonic order.
Yeah, you can't understand the higher things
exactly
without understanding the foundational principles first. Right.
Right. And there's another concept within esoteric circles that as it is above, so below. So, and there's a little bit of a biblical background for that, where you see in Revelation things happen in heaven and then they happen on earth, right?
Yeah.
So it's not entirely false. It's certainly a truism in some sense.
I'm getting that tobacco high off of that guy at this point. I just realized I got flushed and feeling suddenly
I'm kind of edging it.
Yeah,
riding that cusp.
I should stop.
It's a thick cigar.
It is really good. Are you good on that? I'm thinking about opening up the other bottle.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Why not? All right, so camera 3 just died. I'm not sure why. It should have had plenty of power. It's getting power. Anyway, it'll be all right. Wonder if that plug, the one that was acting up with the lights.
I'll show him a cigar trick while you're doing that.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got a little bit of wine here left. And people have always drank wine with cigars on occasion. It's becoming kind of a fad the past few years, especially red wine, to pair it with cigars.
Because it's good.
It is good. It's someone realized this should be a thing, and we should talk about it instead of just doing it because we think it's good.
Yeah.
And there is a neat trick. If you take a well-cut and well-cleaned cigar, and thank you. And the first trick is I didn't have to do it with this one because it was very well packed, but after you cut it, you should lick the back of your hand like that, and you should just dab it on the back, and that'll pull the loose flakes out the back. And then once you've done that, and then you can dip the butt into your wine. I don't have a whole lot left here, so I'll have to tip it. And it does enhance the flavor of the smoke, and it also enhances the flavor of the wine.
I've
You can do it with Scotch too.
Yeah.
But it is. I think it is a little better with white wine. Although I prefer a Scotch with a cigar, usually. Yeah. But whatever's handy is fantastic.
Now, talking about pouring wine, there are some people that don't like to let it glug. However,
that's just silly. That's part of the experience.
you actually want it to glug.
Yeah.
Because you want it to oxygenate
Yeah, it helps a little.
and open up the flavor of the wine that's going in.
Yeah, I'm not one who decants wine, but a lot of wines do, especially red wines, do a lot better when they breathe a little bit.
Yeah. The only thing that would make this better, I think, is maybe a filet mignon. Go with it. I think that would just be... That'd be too much goodness in one episode.
Yeah, one time my wife made fantastic steak dinner. It was cooked perfectly. She bought the meat from somewhere that should earn a Nobel Peace Prize. And I literally felt drunk after eating and drinking half a glass. I mean, it was so good that my senses started failing.
Nice. Nice.
I've only had that a couple times, but that's a pretty amazing experience when you can taste something that good. Anyway, back to the subject.
Back to the subject. So we've established a little bit of how you would come up in Masons or in esoteric cultures, right? Or hierarchies. Mm-hmm. To what ends? What are they aiming for?
Oh, they're aiming for knowledge. That's what they want. They want to know the secrets of the universe. That phrase comes up a lot, not just in the Masons, but.
So far, this is a group I kind of want to join.
That's the problem, isn't it?
Well, where does it become the problem?
Well, where it becomes the problem is where it diverges from truth. And I wouldn't say that it ever completely diverges from truth, because if it did, I think you'd have a lot more dropouts. But where the mystery schools go astray is when they... It's a problem with, in fact, most religions, is that you eventually come to a place where you realize that that every effort you're making is to basically become your own salvation. Right? Mm-hmm. So if you're a Buddhist, you want to reach nirvana, you want to reach the oneness, right? If you're in these esoteric schools, you want to reach an enlightened state of being, an ever more increasing enlightened state of being. If you're a humanist, you want to find the truths of the natural world, and have an understanding of how everything works. And they're pursuing this at CERN. They're pursuing this in physics, to find a unified theory that explains all of the phenomena that we see on a fundamental level, instead of just having a mathematical formula that describes it.
It's 42.
It is 42, and I don't know why no one can accept this.
I mean, it's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on that one, yeah. Which Elon praises as the best work of modern philosophy.
Elon Musk?
Yeah.
It's more philosophical than people give it credit for.
I think so. I also noticed that 42 is the last number in the Lost numbers, if you've ever watched Lost.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Somehow it showed up.
Yeah.
It's 42. Just be done. Now, what 42 means, that's where it becomes interesting.
Well, then you have to get into gematria and all of the things that the esoteric societies are interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So
maybe they do realize it's 42. They're just trying to explain why.
Possibly.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, Douglas Adams kind of let the cat out of the bag on that one, don't you think?
I don't know.
I guess we don't.
You have to tell me who Douglas Adams is.
The author of Hitchhiker's Guide.
I just revealed my ignorance. Yeah. Well, he let it out of the bag, but he let it
I
out.
usually confuse his name with Scott Adams, the author of the Dilbert comic strip.
Maybe they're one and the same.
They may be. Their similarities are very
Right.
vexing and.
So Masons have this neat mystique about them, right? In Hollywood and in pop culture, and some say that they're just well, no, I haven't seen them portrayed in a good light. Not once. It's always been that mystical, like
Hollywood
bad
likes
guys.
Hollywood
hidden.
likes to portray them that way, and I've often wrestled with why. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people in Hollywood are Masons,
Right?
So I've always wondered why that is. I think part of it is to encourage the mystique. Mm. But if you ever see like various websites for various lodges, mm-hmm. They seem to be very, very apologetic, very defensive. They don't seem to like the PR that they've gotten.
You think that's just the lower levels?
I don't know.
Just trying to make nice.
Maybe
because it hasn't been revealed to them what they're actually doing at the top levels. What are they doing at the top levels, do you think?
What I think they're, and of course this is pure conjecture because, no one talks. But if I were to venture a guess, have you ever read the C.S. Lewis's science fiction series?
I have not. Nope.
Well, a recent development in people who study his work, now that he's dead, has been dead for a while, believe that they were actually meant to be read in tandem with the Chronicles of Narnia, whereas the Chronicles were obviously written for children, and the science fiction was obviously written for adults. There are themes that come up, especially themes of Greek gods, themes of the planets, for example. I saw one article where they were talking about how in certain books in the Chronicles of Narnia they seem to follow a pattern of the planets and Greek and Roman associations with them. So certain types of creatures will show up in certain books and not in others, like the dryads and the naiads, for example, the river spirits and the forest spirits. They show up in a couple of the books, but then they disappear for a while, and they don't come back until the last book again for whatever reason. And someone actually took it upon themselves to follow all this, and they found a pattern that the books do follow. They follow a kind of a Greek architecture, which was kind of interesting. I don't know if it was intentional or if it was just a subconscious bubbling up of everything that he knew from from his studies of those cultures at Cambridge. But in the science fiction books, to get back to them, the first two are kind of interesting and explore some interesting concepts of the human condition and things like that. The third book is very different, and people find it very off-putting because it's the difference between what happens there and the other two books is very jarring. And I haven't read them for a while, so I apologize if I'm screwing some of the details up. I need a light.
Yeah.
But but in the last book, instead of traveling to distant planets and meeting strange creatures, most of it I think all of it takes place on Earth at a university that the main character is involved with, and he's working there, and he's trying to climb the ladder there, and he's had these experiences, and so that isn't lost. So there's history from the first two books, but there's some kind of very dark and subversive corruption going on at the university.
Okay.
And this will spoil it if you've not read the books, but so fair warning. But towards the end of the book, there is the main character is trying to figure out who's at the bottom of all this corruption, all this strangeness, and it's revealed towards the end of the book that there is a disembodied head that is housed somewhere deep in the catacombs of the university somewhere. I don't remember where, but and it's floating around in space, dreaming up this agenda that is causing all of the corruption and the disunity and all that.
Okay, so to connect it
to the secret societies, if I had to venture a guess, I think it's something akin to that. And where nobody really knows who the hand is that's moving everything, but that at the it is a hierarchical structure. They all are, and they tend to meet up at somewhere along the pyramidal structure.
So are you saying the Masons have a disembodied head hiding somewhere?
No.
Or
No.
I mean,
it's obviously a metaphor.
Yeah,
but
is it for the?
But I don't
the
think
disembodied intellect
I don't think the
of
prime
Lucifer?
I don't think the prime mover is human. That's my personal belief.
But you don't think it's something good?
I don't think it's something good. And I think it is related to what Christ talks about when he talks about the spirit of Antichrist. When Jesus talks about the spirit of Antichrist is here, and there you will have Antichrist showing up. And then, of course, in Revelation, there's a climax where the man of sin is revealed, right?
Yeah, Antichrist is a fun topic because it's you don't have to be staunchly against the idea of Christ in your delivery of your ideas to be anti-Christ.
Right.
All you have to be is of the belief that Christ isn't necessary, which is a much easier perspective to obtain, I think.
Right. And all esoteric philosophy is of that opinion. And that's where you end up, is in a place where you come to accept that in essence you have been given the ability to bring about your own salvation, whether it's through enlightenment or through some form of penance system, which is one thing I do have against the Catholic tradition. Pretty much the only thing I have against the Catholic tradition.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's either a faith by works, a salvation by works, or a salvation through knowledge.
It's in the details, huh?
Yeah, you are not sufficient of yourself.
That seems to be what Christianity teaches us.
Yeah, that is a very fundamental concept in Christianity.
Otherwise, you would
and it's
not
a very
need-
unique concept.
It is. It is. He is the only one that said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." That nobody gets to God but through me. It's like you can't say he was a good teacher when he said that. He had to have either been a lunatic or the Son of God.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't leave us much room for an alternative.
Yeah, there's no interpretation there. It's I'm it. Yeah. Yep. That's pretty cool.
So we haven't talked much about the Masons.
We haven't. But maybe we'll get into that on the next one. I'm going to say we're probably we're 2 hours in, roughly speaking.
Well, that went quite quick.
Right? That cigar just keeps going. Holy cow. I've never had a cigar that short last that long, but it is a lot of tobacco.
It's fat.
Yeah. But that's been fun. Well, I've learned a lot more just in the general flavor of esoteric society. I've never used that term before, so that's pretty cool.
I started using that term when I started suspecting that there wasn't a whole lot of difference in the philosophy. There have been people who have gotten out. Not of the Masons. That's relatively. There's not a whole lot of pomp and circumstance. You do people who have left. Their social circles are of course destroyed.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, but because it's a social community. That's why most people join, for networking and for business contacts and something bigger than yourself to be a part of.
Yep.
When they quit, it's usually because they come up against something that they can't
live with.
They can't resolve with their worldview that they hold more important.
Yeah.
And the ones I know, it's Christianity. It's not the only one. Especially in this country, that tends to be why people get out.
Mm-hmm. They get to that point where they have to choose between that religion that
right
the
because
Masonic culture was promoting as like, hey, you should get involved in this.
Well, and it's made very clear. It's made very clear that your allegiance to your brothers and to the craft is more important. It's not more. I guess it is more important, but it's more sacred to you than any other allegiance. Mm-hmm. And you can find many examples of that in history. The Boston Tea Party is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. There were guards at the port. I mean, there were British soldiers watching the entire thing happen. They were drunk. The tea partiers. I mean, they were drunk. They weren't very well disguised. I mean, come on. There aren't too many pale Indians running around.
Yeah.
They were all part of the lodge in Boston, and they could not incarcerate their brothers. And they stood by and watched.
Huh.
As it was decided that was going to happen.
Yeah.
I think in the lodge, if I can remember correctly. And they let it happen.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's how important that those brotherly bonds were.
Yeah.
And are.
That's crazy.
So when you've believed that your whole life that the lodge encourages your religion, and which they do, they encourage your Christianity, which they do up until a point, and then you're at a certain point, I don't know where, but you start taking some oaths that challenge and generate some cognitive dissonance between what you're learning in the craft and what your Christian beliefs and ideals are.
Yeah.
And that's how it was like for my wife's grandfather. He got to a point, he won't talk about it. They take oaths. I mean, they do take serious oaths. And those they usually do keep. They don't talk about it. But from what he told her, as just one example, he came across something that made him of the opinion that he could no longer be a part of it. And not only that, but a lot of his brothers in the lodge were in the church he was attending. He left the church, never came back, never went to another church. Because he was of the opinion that the hypocrisy was going to be in any church he went to. So he just quit. And he was actually in Boston, incidentally. But yeah, so he shut down his whole social circle. He left for good and never went back.
What was it?
What was what?
Has he told you?
No,
what that,
no.
He hasn't told you what it was.
Well, he's dead now.
Well, he hadn't.
Yeah.
He didn't.
No, he never told.
Wow.
At least not Jackie.
Yeah.
So
Makes you wonder.
Mhm.
And that's where movies can be made on it, because you just...
yeah.
It's
I have a great uncle who went through the same thing. My grandfather's brother. He got to a certain point where he just said, "This wasn't what I thought it was." Wouldn't tell anybody why. Just left. Never went back. It
makes
was.
you wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Before we get off the topic, there's a funny story from American history, and not many people know that the first successful third party in the United States was the Anti-Masonic Party.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what happened at the time? It was a national news story, or a colony-wide news story.
News story, yeah.
That someone had been found dead. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick.
Yeah, and while you're looking it up, any references you'd like to point people toward? What they should read first, if they want to learn more
first,
about this
I would say read the entire Bible.
Good place to start.
Yeah, before you do anything else. But the sources for what is Freemasonry are pretty well known. The Manly P. Hall wrote several definitive books on what it is, and let's see. There's the Secret Teachings of All Ages is one of his, and they're publicly published. It's not anything secret. There's I think it was either in that one or in Pike's Morals and Dogma. Can't remember. Pike had a book where he listed all of the oaths that are taken at each level of the Scottish Rite. And the Scottish Rite, if I remember correctly, is newer. The Blue Lodge originated in England, and it only has 4 levels to it. There's an introductory level, an intermediate level, and then there's a third level, and then there's a Master Mason. And for that, you have to go to there's Master Mason lodges in England where you go to reach, when you reach that degree, you go there for all the pomp and circumstance, and you're told the things you're told, and you do the ceremonies you do, whatever those are.
Right.
And but in the Scottish Rite, there's at least 32 degrees and possibly 33, and they are linked in some way. And also the Blue Lodge is broken down into other groups, not just it's not a single group. There's Knights Templars, I think I mentioned earlier. Yep. There's I forget the others, but the third level of the Blue Lodge is considered to be a higher level than all of the Scottish Rite. So when you exhaust the Scottish Rite, you go get your third degree in Master Masons. If I remember correctly, it's at least the Master Mason level. Within one of the Blue Lodge sects, I guess you could say. And you have to go to England for that, is what I understand. There isn't a Master Mason lodge here. There are Master Masons here. Yeah. Many, but there's not many, but there's a number of Master Masons within the United States. But from what I understand, you have to go to England or somewhere else in Europe to do that. But the Anti-Masonic Party, I couldn't pull it up, but the oath, I think, is at the lowest level, if I remember correctly. You have to take an oath that you're not going to tell anything, or the brothers will slit your throat and cut out your tongue and bury you in the sand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, they're right up front with it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's taken kind of tongue in cheek, especially today.
Oh yeah.
And I think it probably was at that time too. But
I hope so.
But in any case, they found a guy that was killed this way, and it made the news, and it all the papers were printing it. and there was a backlash, especially since there were a lot of, everyone who was anybody was a Mason at that time. And so especially like the lower level Freemasons, they lost a lot of enrollment.
Yeah.
And
you actually do that.
Right, yeah, this is for real. So we're out.
Yep. For realsies.
And I don't think it was ever definitively proven that it was lodge members that had done the murder, and I think most people suspected it was a frame job.
Yeah.
At least after all the dust settled. But in any case, there was a huge political backlash. And
so the anti-Masons,
right, they were
this wave.
Yeah, they rode that wave. And John Quincy, who was our fourth president,
John Adams' son.
That's right.
Yeah.
John Adams' son, and John Adams was a high level Mason.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if his son was in the lodge or not, but anyway, he headed up the anti-Masonic party, ran on that ticket, and won the election for president.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That sounds like a good place to end.
Yeah.
That's a cool piece of history.
That's a weird,
I appreciate
weird
that
story.
nugget. That is awesome. Well, David Benson, it's been great having you.
Yeah, it's fun.
We'll have to do it again.
All right.
All right. We'll have another cigar, too, next
Yeah,
time.
I think that's a good idea.